What up, YouTube? This is your girl Megan. Welcome back to the Hood Astro Queen. To all of my returning subscribers. But if this is your first time joining me on today, go ahead hit that subscribe button because you know you want to, and then be sure to click that notification bell so that way you'll be alerted whenever I make a post. All right. So happy Wednesday! It's Hump Day. We're almost there. Okay, keep pushing through, guys. Friday is not that far away. And to help get you through your work week, I wanted to come at y'all with a video that's slightly different than the typical celebrity birth chart readings that I normally do. And different in the sense that I wanted to dig into the birth chart of a politician. So, starting with Kamala Harris. Now, people who know me in my personal life know that I am a politics and history buff, big time. And it's kind of been this way for a long time to the point where I get really, especially within the black community. And I made a video on this channel that's kind of closely related to this topic, but it has nothing to do with astrology. So I tried to veer away from politics on this channel. But anywho, I just get really annoyed, especially within the black community, when I hear a lot of people voicing their opinions on certain things and you don't know what you're talking about. And it's just very ironic because as a group of disenfranchised people, the black community does not know shit when it comes to politics. We are very uninformed and overly opinionated. And a lot of us look at politics like a reality show, a sideshow, not really knowing the policy matter of what a lot of these politicians stand behind, the history of it all. And I've lost a lot of respect for people who I otherwise really admired based on their political opinions. But I digress, because once again, this is not that channel. However, I am really hopeful at the fact that a lot of people have seemed to call out a lot of these politicians during this particular election cycle for 2020, in the sense that people are starting to do their homework and they're not being as easily gooped by the anomaly that we call identity politics, right? So people who kind of look like us, selling us a dream, kind of that Barack Obama brand of politics, to where you kind of just assume because they're black or because they're a female or Indian or whatever that these people have your best interest at heart. Because honey, when Miss Kamala Harris came on the scene, all right, the black community did their homework. They did their just due now, and we pulled up those receipts on that ass. And we found out a lot of things that pretty much disqualified her from the race. And not only did it disqualify her from the primaries, it really made you look at her like, this bitch is low-key a sociopath, okay? And furthermore, girl, go sit down, girl. And furthermore, like, I don't too much understand, like, why you continue to do what you're doing, in the sense of, like, why are you even still running? Like, I would feel highly uncomfortable to even show my face in black spaces and amongst disenfranchised communities, having the track record that she has. And that's just the real tea. So I wanted to pull up her birth chart, and ironically enough, I found quite a few things that were very telling. And like I always say, I like to look at certain astrological indicators, so to speak, that kind of give people a deeper look into a person's subconscious, their psyche, and all that jazz. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So Miss Kamala Harris was born on October 20th, 1964 at 9:26 p.m. in Oakland, California. This makes her a Libra sun, Aries moon, and Gemini rising. So her sun and her moon are both in the 27th degree. And it's interesting because 27 breaks down to the number 9. So she has a double dose of 9 energy. And at its very worst, nines can be associated with deceptiveness, or deception, whatever, however you want to say that. And then also closed mindedness and even narcissism. So that's something to think about. And the fact that that 9 kind of appears twice, both in her moon and her sun, is very, very telling because your moon and sun are highly personal planets. One represents your ego, your identity, and then the other represents your emotions, your subconscious, and even your career, your reputation possibly. So, I mean, hey. And then given that she's a Gemini ascendant, her sun falls in her fifth house cusp of Libra. And sun in the fifth house can produce somebody who is highly arrogant. That it reinforces this theme of narcissism, arrogance, an inflated ego of sorts. And this is compounded with her sun forming a quincunx to her 12th house Jupiter. Now, wherever your sun is located can also be a good indicator of your career, your profession, or just things that you identify very closely or strongly with. And Libra represents the justice system. So this could even represent Kamala Harris's reputation or her career as a prosecutor. Okay. Her sun is also forming a sextile to her third house Mars. And with her third house cusp being in the sign of Leo, this could point towards somebody who is very self-focused and just really wrapped up into and tied into their careers. And given that the third house is the natural ruler of media, and then you add that Leo influence, which governs celebrity, this could be somebody who is incredibly popular or just well known within their field, and they tie a lot of their identity and who they are into their line of work. So once again, like I said, this kind of egocentric thing going on, very well aware of how they appear in the world and take a lot of pride in being presented in a certain way, and strongly identify and kind of assign value to themselves by the achievement, so to speak, that they receive in their respective career fields. Her sun is forming a quincunx to her 12th house Jupiter, which once again reinforces this theme of narcissism, as fifth house sun in aspects to Mars and Jupiter produces somebody with the overly inflated ego. Now, her sun is also opposing her Aries moon, which creates a situation to where you either have parents who weren't together, like two people who just kind of like you're a product, an accident baby, essentially, or your parents were together, but perhaps they separated shortly after or maybe before you were born. I'm not really sure what her background is like in that respect. I don't know if her parents are still together or not. So feel free to fact check me in the comments below. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, she has a couple of things in her chart that pretty much reinforce her just being highly unliked or highly disliked by the masses. And that's she has a lot of activity going on with her ascendant, because it's aspecting her midheaven, her Mercury, Sun, and Saturn. It's forming a trine to those planets, but her ascendant is also squaring her Venus, which points towards somebody who is they can be unliked. They can be viewed as very disingenuous by the public. These people can have very tumultuous public careers because her midheaven is in her 10th house of Pisces. And Pisces deals with a lot of maybe secrets being exposed, scandal, somebody who is just subject to a lot of, like I said, highs and lows, so to speak, in their reputation. And I would even argue that this placement could even be indicative of her prosecution career being thrown back in her face, especially with her Saturn being at the 28th degree of Aquarius, and with her being a Gemini rising, her Aquarius falls in her 9th house. So this could deal with somebody who is, because Saturn is all about following the rules. It could even be associated with military or law enforcement. And the 9th house can deal with justice. So this could absolutely further represent her being a stickler or an enforcer, so to speak, of the law, and usually at the expense of other people. And that's another way you can interpret that Pisces midheaven, because Pisces carries an element of victimization with it. And I mean, she has been known to literally victimize poor black, brown, disenfranchised communities by way of prosecuting people for, I'm talking, nonviolent drug offenses. You know, there has been reports of her even arguing against freeing people who were actually found to be, you know, innocent of a crime just because she didn't want to mess up her prosecution rate, and so on and so forth. So you can see all of that here. And then also something else that stuck out to me that was very interesting is given that Kamala Harris has had a very, like I said, dicey kind of upbringing because she moved around a lot. You can see that as her fourth house cusp has her Pluto as well as her Uranus and her, is this her Mars? Her Venus here as well. So especially Uranus in the fourth house can bring about somebody who either has an unconventional family dynamic. So reinforces this idea of her parents not being together, or her having something like to where maybe her mother left. She, you know, she lived with her mother and a step parent kind of thing. Especially with Pluto in the fourth house also, that could create a parent that's not present due to death or just an absence in the home. But then also that Uranus can bring about an element of travel, of instability at home, or instability as far as where you establish your roots, right? Because that's what the fourth house is about, your roots. So kind of her being uprooted, being kind of here, there, and everywhere without really belonging to one specific native land, so to speak. You can see that there too. Now, Kamala's Chiron is conjoined to her midheaven in Pisces in her 10th house. And this can deal with her experiencing trauma surrounding her reputation. But then also, because your 10th house can represent the dominant parent, primarily the father, this can produce somebody who has lots of trauma surrounding their father. And it could produce situations to where they're publicly disowned, publicly humiliated by their father, and often feel never quite good enough or unworthy in the eyes of their father, which is very, very interesting, y'all, because a few days ago, her father actually came out and disowned her essentially from, or just separated himself from the hellhole that is her campaign, right? And granted, it vindicated a lot of us. A lot of us were kind of like happy to see that, you know, because it's like, okay, if your own father is willing to come out and say you're full of shit, then you're really full of shit. However, based off of this aspect, there seems to be an ongoing issue that Kamala has with her dad that I would argue extends far past politics or, you know, her being a phony person to the public. Because, I mean, this aspect really produces a lot of tension there, a lot of internal emotional wounds with the father. So perhaps Kamala's entire career, you know, her entire life, there has been this kind of push and pull issue with her and her dad, or her feeling like she's, no matter how much I accomplish or no matter how much I do in this particular field or this particular avenue, she's probably been unsuccessful in winning over the approval of her father, you know, winning over his heart and his acceptance. So that I wish on nobody, because this is a pretty messed up aspect. Now, her Neptune is conjoined to her Mercury in her 6th house of Scorpio, which quite frankly points towards her being a fucking liar. And we all knew this, right? So this is something that a lot of people were able to sniff out very quickly, especially with her, because Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and with her Pisces being in her midheaven, right? And it has her Chiron in it. She's naturally going to be sniffed out. People are going to be able to tell whenever she's being disingenuous. She's often going to have these things thrown back in her face, which, if you ask me, is a good thing. But Neptune and Mercury in the 6th house of Scorpio also produces like your stereotypical, like an excellent place for a politician, as it can deal with somebody who is highly deceptive, highly manipulative, but also very intelligent. And these people tend to be perfectionists as it pertains to their career. And there's no limit to the things or the lengths that they be willing to go to in order to create a perfect image. Her moon is forming a trine to her black moon Lilith, which is at the first degree of Capricorn. That Lilith in Capricorn is no joke. What house is this? Capricorn falls in her... It's actually in her 8th house. Lord have mercy. So this can point towards her seeking status at all costs, being relentless. It reinforces this theme of her being a energy vampire and infiltrating groups of people, collectives, organizations, communities, and completely just sucking the fucking life out of these groups of people for her own personal benefit and gain. Her being a backstabber to the 10th degree, and especially amongst peers and specifically with women. And this could also make her big on authority, reinforcing this thing that she has going on with like law enforcement, because her son is also sextiling her black moon Lilith. So reinforcing this theme of her being a cop. People used to call her the top cop before she started running for president. You know, it was a well-known little nickname that she had back in the day. So yeah, I mean, this bitch is no joke. She's no joke. Her Mars is opposing her Saturn, which reinforces her inability to blend in with new cultures, her inability to kind of adapt to the people around her. So it's going to make her stick out like a sore thumb. Once again, with her goofy ass going on the Breakfast Club, insinuating that, number one, all Jamaicans smoke weed. And then number two, trying to convince us that she used to get high in college or whenever she was in school, listening to Tupac and Snoop Dogg. Well, a lot of people started doing the math, sis, and we realized, bitch, your ass graduated in 1986. Snoop Dogg and Tupac didn't put out studio albums until the 90s. So unless you're smoking on some futuristic boom bap chronic, bitch, you're lying. You're lying. You're not telling the truth, Kamala. And people can just see that. It looks like she's forcing herself. She's trying so hard. And this aspect can produce somebody who tries very hard to blend in, but they just can't. They can't. And as a result, they're highly likely to make enemies in foreign lands amongst their peers. And this even reinforces the issues, especially with her Saturn being in her 9th house, these issues that she's having with her father, you know, and it could represent her father being somebody of who's in like a high standing, a high influence kind of person in the community. And if I'm not mistaken, her one or both of her parents were a Black Panther or something like that, or especially with her coming from Oakland. Once again, y'all feel free to y'all love fact checking me, so fact check me in the comments. But this her Saturn being in her 9th house could absolutely, especially of Aquarius, could absolutely represent a parent who was kind of like a activist, so to speak. So yeah, there's that. Her Mars, which mind you is in her 3rd house, like I said, in the sign of Leo, is forming a square to her Neptune, her 6th house. Is it 6? Yeah, her 6th house Neptune. And this reinforces her being just your stereotypical politician who spews propaganda. This could point towards somebody who, because that 3rd house, like I said, deals with the media. It could deal with somebody who is just very good at manipulating the public and trying to make things seem one way when they're really something else. Somebody who is very disingenuous. And finally, some little juicy tea that I see here in her chart is her Mars forming a square to her Jupiter. Now, typically this is a blackmail aspect, but specifically looking at her Jupiter, which is placed in her 12th house of Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus in the 12th house can oftentimes create situations where people are engaged in forbidden, like love. Sometimes at the very worst, depending on how it's aspected and what planets are there, these people can be victims of abuse and things of that nature. But this aspect in particular, especially with her Leo Mars falling in her 3rd house, can deal with her having a hidden affair, a secret affair with somebody like a peer or somebody, a celebrity in the media. And the gag is, now I don't know how true this is, but I heard word on the street is she was somebody's side piece. Once again, y'all, feel free to drop down in the comment section below. Let me know. Fill me in. I'm just reading what's in the chart, y'all. The stars don't lie. But the word on the street was she was a side piece for some guy. I don't know if he was a politician or what, but his wife came out accusing Kamala Harris of having an affair with him. And this aspect, like I said, can produce lots of hidden affairs, especially amongst powerful men. And just like that whole theme of taboo, forbidden fruit thing going on. And she could have most likely have been blackmailed in regards to it, somebody coming forth, whether this be the wife, the dude's wife, or anybody else who may have known about it, to say, look, give me this, I want this, or we finna put your ass on Front Street and I'm gonna let everybody know that you're a homewrecker, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, that's very interesting. But I didn't want to take too much time. I just wanted to go over a few aspects that I thought were very telling of her personality and just who she is. And it further confirms what I already knew to be true, that Kamala Harris is, a self-serving, narcissistic bitch. And that's just what it is. So I'm not here to tell y'all how to vote. Once again, this is not a political channel, but I thought that this was a very interesting case study, so to speak. So y'all be sure to drop down in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought about this reading. If you have any suggestions on somebody you would like to see me do a reading on in the future, feel free, drop it down below, and I'll, hopefully get to it whenever I can. Be sure to practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And as always, until next time, I'll holla.